The coffee had gone cold an hour ago, but Dr. Lisa Chen barely noticed as she stared at her computer screens in the dimly lit monitoring station. The Global Space Monitoring Institute in Geneva never slept, and neither did she when something caught her attention like this. Numbers scrolled across 3 different displays, each one showing gravitational readings that made no sense according to everything she knew about physics. She had been tracking this anomaly for 6 hours now, watching it grow stronger near the edge of the solar system, somewhere beyond Neptune's orbit. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for her phone. This was not a malfunction. This was not random cosmic noise. This was something big, something massive, and it was moving toward them. Commander Jake Morrison was reviewing supply reports at the Orbital Defense Command when his personal communicator buzzed with an emergency priority signal. He had been stationed above Earth for 3 years now, managing the defense satellites and coordination systems that protected the planet from space debris and potential threats. In all that time, he had never received an emergency signal at this level. His fingers moved quickly across the holographic interface, accepting the incoming data stream from Geneva. The information that flooded his screen made his stomach drop. Gravitational distortions measuring off the scale, energy signatures consistent with massive objects moving through space, distance markers showing something approaching from the outer solar system. He stood up so fast his chair rolled backward and hit the wall. Within 15 minutes, every major space monitoring station on Earth and in orbit was focused on the same region of space. Within 30 minutes, the United Earth Council had been notified. Within an hour, Admiral Richard Hayes was standing in the command center of Earth's United Fleet headquarters, watching the same data that had started with Lisa Chen's observations. The Admiral was a tall man with gray hair and sharp eyes that had seen too many simulations of scenarios just like this one. He had spent 30 years in space defense, rising through the ranks during the Mars Rebellion and the subsequent peace that followed. He had always believed that humanity would eventually meet other intelligent life. He had just hoped it would happen after he retired. The main display showed a tactical map of the solar system. Red markers were appearing near Neptune, dozens of them, then hundreds. Each marker represented something large enough to generate its own gravitational field, something moving with purpose and coordination. Captain Nicole Turner received her orders while the Valiant was conducting routine patrol near the moon. Her ship was the fastest response vessel in Earth's fleet, designed for quick reconnaissance and rapid deployment. She had been in command for 2 years and her crew trusted her completely. When the message came through marked with Admiral Hayes's personal code, she knew immediately that their routine patrol had just ended. She gathered her bridge crew and explained the situation in calm, measured words. They were to proceed at maximum speed toward the outer system, staying at extreme range and observe whatever was coming toward Earth. They were not to engage. They were not to take risks. They were to gather information and report back. Her crew nodded, their faces serious, and the Valiant's engines burned bright as they accelerated away from Earth. Back in Geneva, Lisa Chen was coordinating with observatories across the planet and in orbit. The data was becoming clearer with each passing minute, and what it revealed was terrifying. The objects were ships, massive vessels that dwarfed anything humanity had ever built. She counted them carefully, checking her numbers 3 times before reporting to the command network. 512 distinct contacts, all moving in formation, all heading directly toward Earth. The world's governments were notified simultaneously. Emergency sessions were called. Military forces went on high alert. News networks picked up the story within hours, and panic began to spread across the planet. People looked up at the night sky with new fear, knowing that something was coming, something that might end everything they knew. Admiral Hayes stood before the United Earth Council in a secured video conference. Representatives from every nation appeared on the screens surrounding him, their faces showing varying degrees of fear, anger, and determination. He briefed them on what was known, which was very little. Unknown vessels, massive in size, approaching from deep space. No communication had been received. No indication of their intentions, though their direct course toward Earth suggested nothing peaceful. The council members argued among themselves. Some wanted to attempt communication. Others wanted to prepare for evacuation. A few suggested immediate military response. Admiral Hayes listened to them all, then spoke in a voice that cut through the chaos. Earth had approximately 200 military vessels capable of combat in space. They had orbital defense platforms equipped with missiles and kinetic weapons. They had ground-based systems that could reach low orbit. Against 500 unknown ships of unknown capability, their chances were not good, but they would defend their home regardless of the odds. The Council voted to give him full military authority. Whatever decisions needed to be made, he would make them. Captain Turner and the Valiant reached their observation position 18 hours after leaving Earth. They stayed at maximum sensor range, using every scanning system available to study the approaching fleet. What they saw made Turner's blood run cold. The alien ships were enormous, some of them several kilometers long. They moved with perfect precision, maintaining formation without any apparent effort. Energy readings suggested powerful reactors, far more advanced than anything humanity possessed. Weapon signatures indicated plasma-based systems and what appeared to be energy shields protecting each vessel. She transmitted all the data back to Earth, then continued to observe as the fleet crossed into the outer solar system. Then the aliens sent their message. It came through every communication frequency simultaneously, translated into every major language on Earth. The voice was mechanical, cold, and absolutely certain of its superiority. The speaker identified himself as representing the Krell Imperium, a vast interstellar empire that had conquered hundreds of worlds across multiple star systems. Earth had been observed and evaluated. Humanity had been judged suitable for annexation. Resistance would be met with complete extermination. Surrender would be met with mercy, though humans would live as subjects of the Imperium. They had 72 hours to decide. The message played on every screen across the planet. People heard those words and felt their hopes crumble. How could they fight something like this? How could they survive against an empire that had conquered hundreds of worlds? Admiral Hayes stood in his command center, surrounded by officers who looked to him for answers he did not have. Lisa Chen watched from Geneva, her scientific mind trying to find solutions where none seemed to exist. Captain Turner held position in the Valiant, knowing that her small ship would be nothing against the force approaching Earth. But Admiral Hayes had not told the Council everything. There were secrets that only a handful of people knew, secrets that had been kept for decades, secrets that might be humanity's only chance at survival. He activated his personal communicator and sent a single encrypted message to a facility hidden deep beneath the Nevada desert. The message contained only 2 words: Protocol Omega. Far below the surface, in a place that officially did not exist, lights began to activate in chambers that had waited in darkness for 50 years. Dr. Raymond Cole, director of Facility 7, read the message on his screen and felt his heart begin to race. He had hoped this day would never come. He had prayed that humanity would never need what his facility contained. But hope and prayer meant nothing now. The countdown had begun, and Earth would either survive the next 72 hours or cease to exist as a free world. The military transport descended into the Nevada desert, just as dawn broke across the horizon. Admiral Hayes sat in silence beside Commander Morrison and Dr. Lisa Chen, all 3 of them processing what little they had been told about their destination. The transport flew low over empty sand dunes, then suddenly dipped downward toward what appeared to be solid ground. A massive section of desert floor slid open, revealing a cavernous entrance that swallowed the aircraft whole. The facility beneath the surface was enormous. Corridors stretched in every direction, lined with laboratories and equipment that looked decades ahead of anything the public knew existed. Security personnel moved with quiet efficiency, their weapons and armor suggesting this place guarded secrets worth killing for. The transport settled onto a landing pad deep inside the complex, and the 3 visitors were met by a woman in military uniform and an elderly man in a white lab coat. Lieutenant Amy Parker introduced herself as security chief and gestured for them to follow. The elderly man walked beside Admiral Hayes, his steps slow but steady. He introduced himself as Dr. Raymond Cole, director of Facility 7, and explained that what they were about to see had been kept secret from the world for nearly 60 years. They entered an elevator that descended for what felt like several minutes. When the doors opened, they stepped into a control center that would have looked at home in a science fiction movie. Holographic displays floated in the air, showing complex mathematical equations and 3-dimensional models of devices that defied easy understanding. Technicians worked at stations around the room, their faces tense with concentration. General Frank Bishop was waiting for them in the center of the room. He had been the military liaison to Facility 7 for 15 years and knew every secret it contained. He shook hands with Admiral Hayes, nodded to Morrison and Chen, then gestured toward the largest holographic display. The story he told seemed impossible, but the evidence was all around them. In 2189, a deep space probe exploring the Alpha Centauri system detected unusual energy readings near the fourth planet. When the probe investigated, it found a debris field from an ancient battle. Among the wreckage were fragments of technology that dated back millions of years, built by a civilization that had mastered physics in ways humanity could barely comprehend. The probe managed to recover a single intact device roughly the size of a car, which turned out to be a data storage core. It took scientists 12 years just to figure out how to access the data without destroying it. What they found inside changed everything humanity thought they knew about the universe. The civilization called themselves the Architects, and they had once controlled hundreds of star systems across this region of the galaxy. Their technology could manipulate space and time, create artificial gravity, and generate energy from quantum fluctuations in the vacuum of space. They had built wonders that would seem like magic to less advanced species, but the Architects had fallen. The data core contained fragmented records of a great war, though the enemy was never clearly identified. The records called them only the Devourers, and suggested they were something far worse than any conventional military threat. The Architects had fought and lost, and in their final days, they had hidden data cores throughout the galaxy, hoping that someday another species might find them and learn from their knowledge. Dr. Cole led them deeper into the facility, past laboratories where scientists worked on projects that seemed impossible. He explained that Facility 7 had been built specifically to study the Architect technology and attempt to recreate even small portions of it. For 50 years, the best minds Earth could gather had worked in absolute secrecy, slowly unraveling the mysteries contained in that ancient data core. They had succeeded in building 3 functional systems based on Architect principles. The first room they entered contained a massive spherical device, suspended in the center of a chamber lined with power conduits. Dr. Cole called it the Quantum Displacement Field Generator. It could create a bubble of altered spacetime around Earth, causing matter and energy within the field to phase slightly out of sync with normal reality. Any ship caught in the field would find its weapons and shields malfunctioning, as their systems tried to operate in 2 states of existence simultaneously. The second room held 12 cylindrical projectors, each one mounted on a mobile platform. These were the graviton cascade projectors, weapons that could fire concentrated beams of gravitational force. When these beams struck a target, they created localized singularities, artificial black holes that lasted only microseconds, but generated enough gravitational stress to tear apart any known material. Each projector had been installed on a specially modified warship over the past 5 years. The third system was different from the others. It was not a single device, but rather a network of quantum computers linked across Earth's orbital defense grid. Dr. Cole called it the Neural Combat Network, an artificial intelligence designed specifically for warfare. It could process battlefield data thousands of times faster than any human mind, coordinating defensive systems and weapons with perfect precision. Commander Morrison asked the obvious question. If they had this technology, why had they kept it secret? Why not use it to ensure peace, to prevent wars, to protect Earth from any threat? General Bishop answered with brutal honesty. The technology was too dangerous to reveal prematurely. If other nations had known about it before Earth's unification, there would have been a new arms race that could have destroyed the planet. If hostile groups had learned of it, they would have tried to steal it or destroy it. The secret had been kept to protect humanity from itself until the world was ready to use such power responsibly. Dr. Chen moved from display to display, her scientific mind racing as she absorbed the information. She asked about testing, about verification, about whether they knew for certain that these systems would work. Dr. Cole's expression grew somber as he admitted the truth. They had run thousands of simulations, built smaller prototypes, tested every component individually, but they had never activated all 3 systems at full power in actual combat conditions. The energy requirements were massive, enough to drain Earth's entire power grid for months. They would have one chance, one moment to prove that 50 years of work had been worthwhile. Admiral Hayes studied the tactical displays showing the Krell fleet's approach. The aliens would reach Earth in less than 48 hours now. He asked the question that everyone was thinking. Would this work? Could they really defeat 500 advanced warships with technology they had never used in real combat? Dr. Cole looked at the Admiral with eyes that had seen too many sleepless nights and carried too much responsibility. He said that according to their calculations and simulations, yes, the architect technology should be able to stop the Krell fleet. According to theory, humanity had a chance. But theory and reality were different things, and they were about to find out which one would prevail. Lieutenant Parker brought them to a conference room where they spent the next 6 hours reviewing operational plans. Captain Turner and the commanders of the 11 other specially equipped ships were brought into the secure communication network. Each of them learned about the weapons their vessels had been secretly carrying, systems they had believed were experimental sensor arrays or advanced shield generators. Each of them understood that they would be humanity's spearhead in the coming battle. As the meeting concluded and preparations began across Earth's defensive network, Admiral Hayes stood alone for a moment in the control center. He watched technicians running final checks on systems that represented humanity's last hope. He thought about the architects, that ancient civilization that had built wonders and still fallen to an enemy they could not defeat. He wondered if humanity was about to repeat their mistake, placing all faith in superior technology while facing an enemy they did not truly understand. But there was no choice now. The Krell were coming, and Earth would either stand and fight with everything they had, or surrender and lose everything they were. The countdown continued, and in less than 2 days, the universe would learn whether humanity deserved to survive among the stars. The Krell fleet crossed Mars' orbit like a swarm of metal locusts, their formation perfect and terrifying in its precision. 512 warships moved as one entity, their hulls gleaming in the distant sunlight, their weapons powered and ready. On the command ship at the center of the formation, War Master Zek Thorin observed the primitive defenses that Earth had arranged between his fleet and their homeworld. The humans had deployed their entire military force, pathetic as it was. 200 small vessels, orbital platforms that looked barely functional, and what appeared to be missile batteries on the planet's surface. Zek Thorin had conquered 17 worlds personally and overseen the annexation of 40 more. He had seen this pattern before, the desperate last stand of a species that refused to accept the inevitable. It always ended the same way. Commander Morrison stood in the Orbital Defense Command Center, surrounded by holographic displays showing the approaching enemy. Every screen displayed impossible odds. Every calculation showed defeat. Every tactical analysis suggested that Earth's conventional forces would last perhaps 15 minutes against the Krell Armada. But Morrison's hands were steady as he coordinated the defensive positions, because he knew something the Krell did not. Captain Turner sat in the command chair of the Valiant, her 11 sister ships arranged in a defensive arc around Earth's orbital space. Her crew worked at their stations with focused intensity, knowing that everything depended on the next few minutes. The weapons officer reported that the graviton cascade projector was charged and ready, though he still did not fully understand what the device would do. Turner did not explain. There would be time for understanding later, if they survived. Dr. Lisa Chen watched from the Facility 7 control center, her scientific instruments tracking every energy signature, every movement, every detail of the approaching fleet. Beside her, Dr. Cole stood with his hand hovering over the activation controls for the quantum displacement field generator. The device hummed with barely contained power, drawing energy from fusion reactors deep beneath the Nevada desert. Admiral Hayes opened a communication channel that broadcast across every frequency, every network, every device capable of receiving a signal. He knew the Krell would hear this, and he wanted them to. He wanted the whole universe to hear what humanity had to say. The Krell response came immediately. War Master Zek Thorin's face appeared on screens across Earth, his alien features expressing something that might have been amusement. He spoke in perfect English, his words carrying the weight of hundreds of conquered worlds. He praised humanity for their courage but called it foolishness. The Krell Imperium had subjugated 417 civilizations. Earth would be 418. This was not arrogance but simple fact, proven across centuries of conquest. He offered one final chance. Surrender now, immediately, without conditions. Humanity would be allowed to live as servants of the Imperium. They would work, they would obey, but they would survive. Refuse and every city would burn, every ship would be destroyed, every human would die. The choice was simple. Admiral Hayes let the silence stretch for a long moment. Behind him, Morrison prepared the activation sequence for the Architect systems. On Earth's surface and in orbit, every defensive platform armed its weapons. In the Valiant and her sister ships, crews gripped their stations and waited for the order they knew was coming. The Admiral's response was a single word, transmitted clearly across every channel so there could be no misunderstanding. No. The Krell fleet opened fire. Plasma bolts erupted from hundreds of weapons, streaking across space in brilliant lines of superheated matter. The first volley struck Earth's conventional defense platforms, and 3 of them exploded instantly, their shields overwhelmed by the sheer power of the alien weapons. Missiles launched from Earth's surface, thousands of them, but they detonated harmlessly against the Krell energy shields, producing spectacular explosions that accomplished nothing. Earth's warships returned fire with everything they had. Kinetic rounds, energy beams, nuclear-tipped missiles, all of it targeting the alien fleet with desperate intensity. Some shots hit, but the Krell shields absorbed the impacts easily. A few Earth vessels managed to land concentrated fire on a single Krell ship, wearing down its shields through sheer persistence. But before they could capitalize on the advantage, return fire from other Krell vessels destroyed them. 4 Earth ships gone in the first 30 seconds. 6 orbital platforms reduced to debris. The battle was unfolding exactly as every tactical analysis had predicted. A massacre that would leave Earth defenseless within minutes. War Master Zek Thorin watched with satisfaction. The humans fought well for primitives, but courage meant nothing against superior technology. He prepared the order for his fleet to advance to bombardment range, where they would begin the systematic destruction of Earth's major cities. Perhaps some humans would surrender once they saw their homes burning. It would make the occupation easier. Then something changed. Commander Morrison's voice cut through the command network, calm and clear despite the chaos of battle. He spoke 3 words that had been planned and rehearsed but never before used in actual combat. Activate Architect protocols. Deep in Facility 7, Dr. Cole pressed his hand against the activation panel. The quantum displacement field generator surged to full power, drawing energy from every available source. Power grids across Earth dimmed as massive amounts of electricity were redirected to the ancient device. The generator began to spin faster and faster, creating a field of altered space-time that expanded outward like an invisible wave. On the 12 specially equipped warships, the graviton cascade projectors came online. The vessels began to glow with an eerie blue light as exotic matter chambers reached operational temperature. Warning alarms sounded in every ship as power levels climbed past maximum rated capacity. But the crews held their positions and waited for targeting solutions. The neural combat network activated across Earth's orbital defense grid, quantum processors engaging in perfect synchronization. In microseconds, it analyzed the position of every Krell ship, calculated optimal firing solutions, predicted movement patterns, and distributed targeting data to every weapon system in Earth's arsenal. The Krell fleet detected the massive energy surge. Sensors across hundreds of ships registered power levels that should not have been possible from such a primitive civilization. War Master Zek Thorin stared at his tactical display in confusion as readings spiked off the scale. He ordered an immediate full assault, sensing that something unexpected and dangerous was happening. 300 Krell ships accelerated toward Earth, weapons charging for a devastating barrage that would overwhelm any defense. They crossed the orbital threshold, entering the space where Earth's defensive perimeter should have been. They crossed into the quantum displacement field. Instantly, chaos erupted across the Krell fleet. Energy shields flickered and failed as they tried to operate in space that existed in 2 states simultaneously. Weapons misfired or refused to charge as their power systems phased in and out of normal reality. Navigation systems showed contradictory data, reporting that ships were in 2 positions at once. Communications degraded to static as signals tried to traverse space that no longer followed standard physical laws. The Krell formation broke apart as ships struggled to maintain control. War Master Zek Thorin screamed orders demanding explanations. but his own vessel was experiencing the same malfunctions as the rest of the fleet. Captain Turner's voice came across the human command network, and there was steel in her tone. All ships weapons free. Target acquisition locked. Fire. 12 beams of invisible gravitational force lanced out from the glowing human warships. Where they struck Krell vessels, space itself twisted and collapsed. The first targeted ship imploded, its hull crushed inward as an artificial singularity formed at its center. The singularity lasted only a fraction of a second before collapsing, but it was enough. The massive warship compressed into a ball of dense matter barely 10 meters across, then exploded outward in a burst of energy and debris. The second ship died the same way. Then the third, then 10 more as the targeting network adjusted and fired again. The battle had begun, and in 18 seconds, 75 Krell warships had ceased to exist. The space around Earth had become a graveyard in less than half a minute. Debris from destroyed Krell warships tumbled through the void, glowing fragments of metal and plasma spreading outward in expanding spheres. The remaining Krell vessels struggled to regroup, their formations shattered, their confidence broken by an enemy they had dismissed as primitive and helpless. War Master Zek Thorin gripped his command console as his flagship shuddered from nearby explosions. His tactical display showed losses that seemed impossible. 75 ships destroyed in the first exchange, and the human weapons were firing again. He had conquered worlds across dozens of star systems, faced enemies with advanced technology and desperate courage, but he had never seen anything like this. The humans had somehow trapped his fleet in a field that crippled their defenses while simultaneously deploying weapons that defied every law of physics he understood. He opened a fleet-wide channel and ordered immediate retreat, but the command never completed. The quantum displacement field had another function that Dr. Cole activated from Facility 7. The field intensified, creating gravitational eddies that slowed the Krell ships to a crawl. Their faster-than-light drives refused to engage, detecting spatial distortions that would tear the ships apart if they tried to jump. The Krell fleet was trapped, caught in a killing zone with no escape. Commander Morrison watched his tactical display update in real time as the Neural Combat Network coordinated Earth's assault with inhuman precision. Every graviton cascade projector fired in perfect sequence, never wasting a shot, never targeting the same vessel twice. The artificial intelligence calculated trajectories, predicted evasive maneuvers, and adjusted firing solutions faster than any biological mind could process. It was like watching a chess master play against opponents who could barely understand the rules. Captain Turner felt the Valiant shake as the graviton cascade projector fired again. Power levels were climbing dangerously high, the exotic matter chambers generating gravitational forces that stressed every system on the ship. Warning lights flashed across multiple consoles, and her chief engineer reported that they were operating at 130% of rated capacity. Turner acknowledged the report but did not order a reduction in power. They needed to maintain this assault for just a few more seconds. Another Krell ship imploded under the gravitational stress, its massive hull crumpling like paper in a fist. The artificial singularity at its center pulled in nearby vessels, dragging them off course and causing collisions that added to the chaos. 2 Krell ships crashed into each other at high speed, their shields already failing from the displacement field, and both exploded in brilliant flashes of released energy. Dr. Lisa Chen monitored the energy readings from Geneva, her screens showing power consumption that made her heart race with fear and excitement. Earth's power grid was holding, but just barely. Cities across the planet had gone dark as every available megawatt was redirected to the architect systems. Fusion reactors operated beyond safety limits, their containment fields stressed to the breaking point. If anything failed now, if any component overloaded, the entire defensive network would collapse and the Krell would recover their advantage. But nothing failed. The architect technology held, performing exactly as designed, as it had been engineered to perform millions of years ago by a civilization that had mastered the fundamental forces of the universe. The conventional Earth forces joined the assault now that the Krell shields were failing. Missiles that had bounced harmlessly off energy barriers minutes ago now struck hull plating directly. Nuclear warheads detonated against Krell vessels, blasting armor apart and venting atmosphere into space. Kinetic rounds punched through weakened defenses, tearing into critical systems. What Earth's weapons could not do alone, they could do when the enemy was already crippled and dying. War Master Zek Thorin made one final attempt to salvage the situation. He ordered all remaining ships to concentrate their fire on the 12 human vessels that glowed with blue light, the obvious source of the gravitational weapons. If they could destroy those ships, perhaps they could turn the battle around. 300 Krell warships turned their weapons toward the Valiant and her sister ships, preparing to fire everything they had in one massive volley. The Neural Combat Network detected the targeting shift immediately. It calculated the incoming threat, determined optimal countermeasures, and redistributed defensive resources in microseconds. Earth's orbital platforms shifted their fire to intercept the Krell plasma bolts. The 12 special ships activated emergency evasive protocols, their engines burning at maximum as they scattered from their positions. The Krell fired. Thousands of plasma bolts streaked across space, more firepower than had been unleashed in any single moment of the battle. Some shots found their targets. The Earth defense ship Guardian took 3 direct hits and exploded, its crew of 200 vanishing in an instant. The Defender lost its engines and tumbled out of formation, crippled but intact. The rest of the special ships survived, protected by the coordinated defensive fire of the entire Earth fleet. And the Graviton Cascade projectors fired again. 30 more Krell ships died in that exchange. The gravitational beams punched through the concentrated formation, creating cascading failures as singularities pulled ships into each other. The Krell had tried to mass their forces for a killing blow, but in doing so, they had made themselves a perfect target for weapons designed to exploit exactly that kind of tactical error. Captain Turner reported that the Valiant's power systems were at 150% capacity. The ship was literally tearing itself apart from the inside, conduits melting, processors burning out. But the Graviton Cascade projector continued to fire. Her crew worked with desperate efficiency, rerouting power, bypassing damaged systems, doing everything possible to keep the weapon operational for just a few more seconds. Dr. Cole watched the countdown timer in Facility 7. 47 seconds since the Architect protocols had activated. Every second felt like an eternity. Every second brought them closer to either victory or catastrophic systems failure. The quantum displacement field generator was holding, but its power draw was increasing exponentially. They had maybe 30 more seconds before the entire device would overload and explode, taking a significant portion of Nevada with it. 20 more Krell ships died, then 30, then 45 as the targeting network achieved perfect synchronization with all remaining functional weapons. War Master Zek Thorin's flagship took a direct hit from a Graviton Cascade projector. The gravitational beam struck the ship's reactor section, creating a singularity that collapsed the containment fields. The fusion reactor went critical, and the flagship exploded with the force of a small star. Zek Thorin had just enough time to realize that he had underestimated the humans, that his arrogance had doomed not just his fleet, but potentially his entire species standing in the galaxy. And then there was nothing but light and heat in the end. The remaining Krell ships broke completely. Some tried to ram the human vessels in desperation, but they moved too slowly in the displacement field and were picked off before they could close the distance. Others simply drifted, their systems too damaged to maneuver, waiting for the end. A few managed to launch escape pods, hoping that mercy might save them where weapons had failed. Commander Morrison counted down the final seconds. 512 ships had entered Earth space. Fewer than 50 remained operational, and those were dying as fast as the targeting network could acquire them. At 53 seconds from the initial activation of Architect protocols, the last functional Krell warship suffered a catastrophic containment failure. Its reactor exploded, and the ship disintegrated into expanding clouds of superheated plasma and metal fragments. The battle was over. Commander Morrison stood in shocked silence, staring at his tactical display. The screen showed nothing but debris fields, scattered life pods, and the flickering signatures of dying reactors. He had prepared for this moment, planned for it, run simulations of it hundreds of times, but actually experiencing it felt unreal. He opened a channel to all Earth forces, his voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding his system. Cease fire. Battle is concluded. Begin search and rescue operations for survivors. Across Earth's orbital space, weapons powered down. The Graviton Cascade projectors fell silent, their exotic matter chambers cooling after their brief but devastating use. The quantum displacement field began to collapse, space-time slowly returning to normal as Dr. Cole initiated the shutdown sequence at Facility 7. The entire engagement, from first shot to complete victory, had lasted 53 seconds. Humanity had destroyed an Imperial Armada that had conquered hundreds of worlds, and they had done it in less than a minute. The silence after the battle felt heavier than the chaos that had preceded it. Captain Turner sat in her command chair aboard the Valiant, listening to damage reports from every section of her ship. The vessel had survived, but just barely. Half the power conduits were melted. 3 decks had lost life support, and the graviton cascade projector was a twisted ruin that would never fire again. Her crew had performed miracles to keep the ship functional during those 53 seconds, and now they worked just as hard to keep it from falling apart in the aftermath. Across Earth's orbital space, rescue teams deployed from every functional vessel. The Krell life pods were collected carefully, their occupants processed as prisoners of war. Over 3,000 alien survivors were recovered from the debris field, shocked and broken by the speed of their defeat. They had expected to conquer Earth within days. Instead, their entire fleet had been destroyed in less than a minute by an enemy they had dismissed as primitive. Admiral Hayes stood before the United Earth Council 24 hours after the battle. The council chamber was filled with representatives who looked at him with expressions ranging from relief to anger to fear. They were grateful that Earth had survived, but the revelation of Facility 7 and the architect technology had shaken their trust in the military leadership. Secrets of that magnitude, kept for nearly 60 years, made them wonder what else they did not know. Hayes did not apologize for the secrecy. He explained in clear terms why the architect technology had been kept hidden. Before Earth's unification, revealing such power would have sparked conflicts that could have destroyed human civilization from within. Rival nations would have fought to control it, terrorist groups would have tried to steal it, and the resulting chaos would have left Earth vulnerable to exactly the kind of threat they had just faced. The secret had been kept to protect humanity until they were mature enough to wield such power responsibly. Commander Morrison testified about the technical details of the battle. He showed them recordings of the engagement, slowing down the footage so the council could comprehend what had happened in those brief seconds. He explained how the quantum displacement field had crippled the Krell defenses, how the graviton cascade projectors had exploited that weakness, and how the neural combat network had coordinated everything with perfect precision. The council members watched in silence as the videos showed Krell warships imploding under gravitational stress. Entire formations destroyed in seconds. Dr. Lisa Chen presented her analysis of the energy consumption during the battle. The numbers were staggering. Earth's power grid had come within minutes of complete collapse. Several fusion reactors had operated beyond safety limits and would need months of repairs. Cities across the planet had experienced blackouts lasting hours. If the battle had continued for even 30 more seconds, critical systems would have failed and the architect technology would have shut down. The victory had been closer than it appeared. Balanced on a razor's edge between triumph and disaster, Dr. Cole stood before the council and revealed more secrets from Facility 7. The architect data core contained information about the galaxy that changed everything humanity thought they knew about their place in the universe. There were hundreds of spacefaring civilizations scattered across thousands of star systems. Most of them were hostile or indifferent to newcomers. The Krell Imperium was not even among the most powerful, just a mid-tier aggressive empire that had grown through conquest of weaker species. The architects themselves had been one of the most advanced civilizations in galactic history, but even they had fallen. The data core spoke of an enemy called the Devourers, something far worse than conventional military threats. The records were fragmented and unclear, but they suggested that the architects had been destroyed not by another empire, but by something that consumed entire civilizations, leaving nothing but empty worlds behind. The architect's final message was a warning to any species that found their technology. The galaxy was dangerous, filled with threats that could not be defeated by weapons alone. Power without wisdom led only to extinction. The council debated for hours about what to do with this information. Some wanted to hide it from the public, fearing mass panic. Others insisted that humanity had a right to know the truth about the universe they inhabited. Eventually, they agreed on a compromise. The basic facts would be shared, carefully and gradually, allowing people to adjust to the new reality, without causing social collapse. Captain Turner and the other ship commanders reported on the status of their vessels. The Guardian had been lost with all hands. 200 brave souls who had given their lives to protect Earth. The Defender was crippled but could be repaired. The other ships had survived, but all of them needed extensive repairs to their graviton cascade projectors. The exotic matter chambers that generated the gravitational beams had burned out after less than a minute of use. Dr. Cole explained that they would need to completely redesign the systems, making them more durable and efficient, learning from the combat data to improve the next generation of weapons. The interrogation of Krell prisoners revealed information that both encouraged and worried Earth's leaders. The Krell had chosen Earth as a target precisely because they believed it would be an easy conquest. They had observed humanity from a distance, seen a relatively primitive civilization with limited space travel, and assumed victory would be simple. They had no idea that Earth possessed architect technology. That ignorance had cost them everything. But news of the Krell defeat was already spreading through the galaxy via faster-than-light communication networks. Other civilizations were learning that Earth had destroyed an entire Imperial fleet in less than a minute. Some saw this as an opportunity, viewing humanity as a potential ally against common enemies. Others saw it as a threat, a dangerous newcomer that needed to be eliminated before they grew too powerful. Earth had announced its presence to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible, and the consequences of that announcement were only beginning to unfold. Admiral Hayes made a decision that would define humanity's future. Earth would not hide from the galaxy. They would not pretend to be weak or hope that stronger civilizations would leave them alone. They would build more ships equipped with architect technology. They would expand their presence in the solar system and beyond. They would venture into the galaxy as a civilization, ready to defend itself and its interests. Not as conquerors like the Krell, but as a people who had earned their place among the stars through courage and ingenuity. Construction began on new vessels within weeks of the battle. Facility 7 expanded its operations, recruiting the best scientists and engineers from across Earth. The secrets were out, and now humanity would use that knowledge to ensure their survival in a hostile universe. Dr. Cole worked with international teams to improve the architect technology, making it more reliable and less dependent on Earth's entire power grid. The next generation of weapons would be stronger, more efficient, and ready for whatever threats emerged from the depths of space. Commander Morrison returned to Orbital Defense Command, now tasked with coordinating an expanded defensive network. Earth would never again be caught unprepared. New satellites were deployed, sensor arrays were upgraded, and contingency plans were developed for scenarios ranging from diplomatic first contact to full-scale invasion. The universe had proven to be dangerous, and humanity would face that danger with open eyes and ready weapons. Dr. Chen continued her research into the Architect Data Core, slowly translating the vast amounts of information it contained. She discovered references to other civilizations that had found architect technology, some of which had used it wisely, and others that had been destroyed by their own arrogance. She found star charts showing the locations of other data cores hidden across the galaxy, suggesting that the architects had left multiple caches of their knowledge waiting to be discovered. Most intriguing of all, she found encrypted files that even after months of work remained sealed, protected by security protocols that suggested they contained information too dangerous to share freely. Captain Turner took command of a new ship being built, specifically to carry improved architect weapons. She handpicked her crew from volunteers who had proven themselves in the battle against the Krell. They trained relentlessly, preparing for the day when Earth would need them again, knowing that the Krell would not be the last threat humanity would face. 6 months after the battle, Earth launched its first expedition beyond the solar system. 3 ships equipped with architect-derived faster-than-light drives departed for Alpha Centauri, the system where the original data core had been discovered. Their mission was to search for more architect technology and to establish humanity's first interstellar outpost. The crews knew the risks, knew that the galaxy was full of dangers they could barely imagine, but they went anyway because that was what humanity did. They explored, they learned, they survived. Dr. Cole stood alone in Facility 7 late one night, accessing the deepest files in the Architect data core. He had found something that he had not shared with anyone else, not even Admiral Hayes. It was a message embedded in the core's programming, designed to activate only after the weapons had been used.